Hello, one and all. Today we're continuing our study here at KBC, and today's study is called God is Looking for What He Loves, and focusing in on Luke chapter 15. We're continuing to use our devotional as our main kind of focus, and then using that as a springboard to looking perhaps more widely at the chapter. So Luke 15, what do we find there? Well, it's a trio of parables told by Jesus about lost things, lost sheep, lost coin, and lost son. And we know what it's like to lose things. It's frustrating, isn't it? And Jesus taps into that feeling of wanting to get it back, whatever it is. And he uses that to communicate to his audience how he feels about his lost things, i.e., us. He wants to restore us to himself in relationship, and he wants to restore to us that which was lost, especially living in a fallen world and the effects of that. So, what was the original audience when Jesus told those parables? What was the context of the story? Well, Jesus tells the parables in response to the Pharisees sneering at and objecting to the presence of what they called the sinners, the people that Jesus had welcomed. Luke 15, verse 1 sets up the context. It says this: Now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathering around to hear Jesus, but the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." Eats with them because that was a sign of welcome, of acceptance in their culture. So they don't deserve to be welcomed in the Pharisees' eyes. To eat with them was a no-no. They're unclean, they haven't kept the law, they don't go to the temple, they don't all do all the things that we do. They're not one of us. And what's Jesus' message to them? Well, these are welcome. Gentiles, prostitutes, tax collectors, soldiers, whoever they might happen to be, they are all welcome. Truly shocking to the Pharisees. And so he tells these parables to illustrate how he feels about the so-called lost. So the first of the two parables, or rather the first two parables, the lost sheep and the lost coin, are quite simple stories, really, just about losing things. Shepherds losing sheep, a woman loses a coin. We've all lost something precious to us, haven't we? But he uses something that would be meaningful to them. So in their culture, shepherd loses a sheep, woman loses a coin, focuses on the extraordinary lengths they go to finding that thing. So the shepherd leaves the 100 or the 99 to look for the one. The woman sweeps through, gets her neighbours involved to turn the house upside down to find it. As if to say, this is how I feel about that group that you guys, the Pharisees, have just sneered at and objected to. And by the way, the message is that is how God feels about us. And what joy in heaven there's experienced when the lost is found. But the parable of the lost son, that's the third of the three parables, goes into an extra layer of detail to address these two audiences. The youngest son in the parable equates with the sinners, and the older son who stays at home, the Pharisees. And Jesus skillfully links the story with his audience and speaks directly into their situation. So both audiences find out that they are loved, that they are valued, and both audiences find out that they're both a bit lost as well, but in different ways. So how does he do that? Well, the first message for the sinners, let's look at that. In the story, the younger son thinks he's blown it because he left home asking for his share of the inheritance and blows it on wild living, ends up in a pigsty and thinks, gosh, I'm better off at home working as a slave than I am here. So he does a little speech, expects to be, welcomed back, but with conditions that he is a servant. Unexpectedly, the father, when he sees him, is overjoyed. He's been waiting for him expectantly, throws a party, shows total acceptance, unreserved grace, total forgiveness. And the son is overjoyed. Well, that's the message for the sinners. You are welcome. In fact, more than welcome. Jesus is overjoyed to see them. The message for the Pharisees, equates with the older son. Well, in the parable at first, he doesn't look so bad. He stays at home after all. He doesn't go off and do something overtly wayward like the younger son. Continues to work. But what he says, the older son says, when the prodigal son, that's the wasteful son, the lost son, returns, well, that betrays the fact that the older son's been harboring resentment for years. He says, look, all these years I've been slaving for you. That's when the father comes to talk to him. And I've never disobeyed your orders. You never gave me a party, but when this son of yours has squandered all your property with loose living, then you throw a party for him. And how does God deal with that son, the older son? Oh, that's my phone. And this is what I find the most amazing reaction of all. This guy represents the Pharisees with all their guile, with all their gall and their bitterness and unforgiveness. And he says these words. He says, son, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. It's an amazing statement of commitment, isn't it? And of love, coming from a doting father with no limitations on his grace and his mercy. Just, you're always with me, and everything I have is yours. And by the way, that was always the case for the eldest son. He just couldn't see it. Sort of taken his eye off father. Well, it's interesting when you compare the two sons, both of them at the end regarded them as, or themselves, as slaves. The younger son because he thought he'd blown it, the elder son because he thought he was earning father's love by simply getting his head down and working hard. And over the years, he just entrenched himself in that bitterness, thinking, I'm not appreciated. When all the time, he had a father full of grace and love, he just couldn't see it. He'd lost sight of father. In fact, both of them had. And this is the message to the crowd that day. Grace is free. You can't earn it. Join the grace party. We're all a bit lost. And we need Father, all of us, to help us. And the good news is that our Father says, I'm always with you, and everything I have is yours. To us as well. Well, that's the message of Luke 15. Hope you enjoyed it. God bless. Hope to see you soon. Bye for now.